All right, what's up, guys? Joshua and I getting together today, and we wanted to talk about a topic that almost every single guy that we work with in Authentic Dating Secrets struggles with and speaks about at some point. And also, a lot of our private clients as well talk about this thing. It's called fear of rejection. It's this thing that happens to all guys. I don't know if it's all guys, certainly every guy that I speak to about, connecting with women in some form or another. And there's this underlying question whether the guys are really, asking it explicitly or not. It's how do I overcome fear of rejection? And so that's what we're going to dive into today. We've worked with a lot of guys around overcoming fear of rejection, and there's some really elegant, frameworks and tools and practices that we want to deliver to you today.
Yeah, and I want to say that fear of rejection can happen at any level of the relationship game. It's not just about being rejected on that approach or being rejected on that first kiss, on that first date, it goes deep in relationship. We can be in a relationship with somebody for years and still be afraid of being rejected for revealing desires that we have or parts of ourselves that are authentic, but that might not be congruent with what we think our partner wants. And so we never have a pass on learning how to navigate the fear of rejection and really learning how to stay authentic in the presence of that fear.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to talk about it in a dating context today, but what you say is so true.
Yeah. And, I want to share a story actually. A few years back after Robert had just had gone through a pretty painful breakup on a long-term relationship, I flew out to Boise to wingman for him and just kind of get him out into the world again and have some fun and connect with women. And we were out there and giving each other challenges and experiments to do. And there was this table with these 3 or 4 women sitting at it. And part of the challenge here and the invitation was just to stay with whatever was going on with a sense of like ease and openness, right? Like just be in permission for whatever happens. And so we sit down at this table and we start engaging these women, and they all just kind of like shut down and start like looking at each other and like,
because we just came and sat at the table and started striking up a conversation. Dudes don't normally just come sit down at the table and strike up a conversation. It was at a bar. There's people around.
Yeah.
So.
And it was a long table. It's not like we like sat in their booth with them or something.
Yeah.
But it was one of the most awkward moments of ever, right? Because it wasn't just like, oh, like, hey guys, like we're kind of having our own private space. It was like they were just looking at us with like awkward disdain and not even really like talking to us. And so I, in the moment I was just like, wow, like this is really awkward, isn't it? And I just like was just honest about what was happening in the moment with them and kind of stayed with this sense of awkwardness. And they were like, yeah, and if you want to know what ended up happening in that conversation, then stick around till the end of the video, because did we, walk away with our tails between our legs, or did we end up in a sort of intimate fivesome that night with these 3 ladies? Like, who knows? You'll find out at the end of the video if you stick around.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about what do you do in moments like this? These moments where you are attracted to somebody, you want to go up and start talking to them, or maybe you've already started talking to them and it's time to end the interaction for the moment, and you want to get her Instagram or her phone number and maintain connection somehow. These moments where we're like, fuck, what if she says no? Am I going to look like a creep? Am I going to look like a douchebag? I don't want to get rejected. So what do you do in moments like these? Well, we want to talk first about what doesn't work. And probably a lot of the stuff is going to be familiar for you if you're anything like the guys that we work with. One of the things that doesn't work is sitting there and telling yourself stories in your head about how you might get rejected or what she might think of you and do absolutely nothing. Has that ever gotten you the results that you wanted? It didn't for me ever.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that doesn't work is beating yourself up inside of your head and telling yourself that you should man up. So, sometimes this happens in the moment, but sometimes it happens afterward. I should have just manned up, but don't be such a pussy. You might tell yourself in your head, or, hey, you should have this shit figured out by now, or you're broken. Like you don't even know how to interact with women. You're never gonna fucking learn. A lot of guys that we talk to have stories like these that go through their heads. Or you're not attractive enough. You've got too much of a belly. She's out of your league. Yeah, just all kinds of flavors like this. Stories we tell ourselves. That's also what doesn't work. What else doesn't work, Joshua?
Well, this whole idea that you're supposed to be confident and know what you're doing already doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the fact is that anybody who's really stretching themselves is really stepping into connecting with women who really awe you and get you really excited. You're having to face fear, right? Fear comes up, like this excitement comes up and can be interpreted as fear in the nervous system. And what you do in the presence of fear is you take courageous, vulnerable action. Courage over confidence any day of the week, right? No matter how many women I've approached, no matter how much success I've had with women, when I find a woman attractive and I feel that sense of that sensation in my body, then I can be afraid. And so taking action in that moment is about courage, not about confidence. Confidence is doing something that you've done 1,000 times and knowing that it's going to go fine because you've done it 1,000 times. So I just want to really like reframe that. Like, you don't have to be confident. You don't have to know what you're going to say. You don't have to even look like you know what you're doing. What is going to get you from where you are to where you want to be is acts of vulnerable courage, is taking a risk and doing something new and trying something out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this framework that we want to bring into the conversation here, which is the idea that the only person who can reject you is who, Joshua?
Me. I'm the only person who can reject you. So if you're not talking to me, you can't be rejected. Is yourself, man. The only person who ever actually rejects you, the being, is you. Because other people are just focusing on what they really want to attend to. It's not about you. The only person who makes it about you is you. So don't make it about you. What other people do is not about you. It's about them doing what they want to do, following their threads of interest, responding to their own nervous systems and their own expectations, desires, traumas, and expectations. And
I want to say something, just add a little piece to that, which is so much of the time, and I have had this validated through conversations I've had with women and women that I've been attracted to, and just with women in general. So many times the stories we're telling ourselves in our head, they're not even true. How we think we look to women, how we think we come across, sometimes there's some truth to it, but oftentimes we're far from the entire truth.
Yep. And often when I've had an opportunity to sort of check in with whether the stories that I was telling myself were true, as Robert said, they were totally false. I so easily go to the set point of something's wrong with me, and that's why they're not doing what I want them to do, or giving me the attention that I want, or responding the way that I want, because it's my problem. It's something wrong with me.
You make it all up in advance before you even do anything again, and it all stops you. All this stuff that you're making up just stops you from doing a single thing in the first place.
Yeah.
So and
the thing is too, that as you were saying, that we often reject ourselves before we even take the risk, right?
Yep.
So many times in your life, you've had that impulse to connect with somebody. You've had that desire show up in your inner compass, and you basically pre-reject yourself before you even take the risk to go seek out that connection.
And I just want to say, I think this is huge for guys. As we're having this conversation, I'm remembering a client that I worked with a few years ago, and he was like, what if I get rejected? I'm so scared of being rejected. And this piece it's like, well, you're doing it to yourself right now. And he had no idea. He really, truly was looking out there at the world and believing that something was happening to him, and that it, you know, that rejection was happening to him.
Yep. And you know, I love the Tim Ferriss quote that goes something like, the measure of success of somebody's life, or the success of somebody's life, can often be measured by the number of difficult conversations they're willing to have, right? Which is just a high sensation conversation, something that you might be avoiding, a place where you might feel fear of rejection. And of course, relationship and connecting with women is a powerful training ground to build resource and courage around this reflex, but it's everywhere in your life. In your work, in your business, in, you know, on your team, wherever you are in your life, the more capable you are of asking for something and being willing to have that request be denied. You know, I would adjust Tim Ferriss's quote to say, like, our lives, the success of our lives can often be measured by how much we're willing to ask for, like how much we're really willing to stretch into asking for. And approaching a woman is implicitly a request for connection, right? So how can you get out of the cycle of getting stuck in your head and rejecting yourself? What does it take and there's a couple levels. There's the internal level of the game, and then there's the action that you take again and again, right? So let's talk a little about the internal level of the game, Robert.
Yeah. So this really comes down to own your value. If you've watched the Authentic Dating Secrets webinar, we speak about this. This means doing the inner work that it takes around your shame. A lot of guys have shame around their sexual desire or romantic desire. Religion has had a huge impact on a lot of guys, and just our culture in general gives us really confusing messages about what's okay and what it means to be a safe man. There's so much shame wrapped up inside of so many men. And it means doing the work just around the places where we have been hurt, when we have expressed our truth. That might not show up as shame necessarily, but as anger that we're still holding on to, as grief that we're still holding on to for moments where we did get vulnerable and didn't get the response that we wanted. And the way that I look at it really is, there's a quote by, it's by Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist.
The Alchemist.
Yeah. And there's I'm paraphrasing here, but it goes something like, your only job is to, this might be Rumi, I might be getting my authors totally mixed up. But he basically says your job is not to seek for love. It's not to go out there in the world looking for what you want. Your only job is to just remove the layers that are keeping it from happening to you and keeping it from expressing through you. And this inner work for me really comes around, how do I just shed these layers that I've picked up over my lifetime so I can just be relaxed and be spontaneous and be natural and be present in the moment and available to express and adapt based on what's happening in the moment.
Yeah. And then, you know, the bottom line here is you're enough. You're enough. You're enough just as you are. That you have a gift that nobody else in the universe can give, and it's your presence. And that presence is valuable, whether somebody who you're offering it to sees that and wants that or not.
Yep.
And the moment that we step toward a woman or any person, needing them to validate our value by responding to us in a certain way, then we set up this implicit demand, which makes it harder for them to just joyfully receive the gift of our presence, number one. And number two, if they don't receive the gift of our presence, then we see it as a reflection of our own value. And that's not value owned, that's value borrowed. You're borrowing your value from everybody who you're interacting with, trying to get that hit of confirmation or affirmation of your value.
Yeah. And
that's the inner work. You gotta come to terms with who you are. And it's not your bank account. It's not the size of your biceps. It's not the kind of car you drive or the job that you have or these titles that you might carry. None of these things are where your value truly lies. Your value truly lies in your capacity to just show up and be present with somebody. and connection, that human contact is the most valuable currency in the universe. Ask so many billionaires and people who are on their deathbeds surrounded by things and no people who love them. So cultivating a sense of the intrinsic value of connection, and that your presence is really, truly the greatest gift that you can offer somebody, is a really important way to obliterate the illusion of rejection.
Yeah. And from there, the outer work comes into place. It's simply, I have a desire. There's a desire for connection. I want to say a tiny bit about this. You know, you were talking earlier about asking, you know, being willing to ask for something, but this isn't about getting necessarily. This is about becoming a giver. You say this phrase often, Joshua, give a fuck. Don't try to get a fuck. The thing is that even when I'm giving, even when I'm out here giving my energy, it's still a bid for connection. There still is an ask of some sort in there somewhere. And so as you continue to work this inner peace around having your, you know, owning your value, realizing that rejection is an illusion, it becomes a game and a practice of taking some action, going out there, making these bids for connection.
Yep. Offering it up as a gift, right? Yep. It's a gift economy. It's not a capitalist economy. In a capitalist economy, I have a commodity, I trade it for a specific other commodity, and we have an exchange. In a gift economy, I just give what's joyful for me to give, trusting that other people are going to give what's joyful for them to give, and we're all going to have enough, right? And we can boil a lot of this down to scarcity, a sense of scarcity consciousness. There's not enough. I'm not enough. It comes down, you know, but when you pull all those projections of whether there's enough back into yourself, you have to ask yourself, am I enough? And the more that you can keep affirming that you are enough through your own practices, and look at the places where you are holding an impossible standard for yourself to be enough. And let me tell you, as somebody who has lived my whole life with an impossible standard of what is enough, like if I'm not perfect, I am fucking worthless. Like that, there is that still inside of me to this day, despite all of the work I've done. And I have to keep my eye on that, right? To really allow me today, this me, who happens to be a me who's like actually got a hurt heart right now. If I'm totally honest with you, I'm in pain. To let this me be enough today. And I don't need anybody else to validate me or help me feel better about myself. I just get to show up as this me and follow the arrows of my desire, the compass of my desire, and see what happens.
And I want to speak about another kind of enough too, which is a lot of guys that we work with. This is me in the past, absolutely, is the kind of enoughness of connection. Really, like we are human beings who, at a fundamental level, need connection. Absolutely, romantic and sexual connection is a core human need that absolutely applies to men. A lot of the guys that we work with have been in a dearth. They have just been in a vacuum of the quantity and quality of female connection that they desire. And it can be a difficult proposition of, okay, well, how do I own my value? How do I know that I am enough? How do I know that I have enough when I haven't had sex in 3 years, you know, when I haven't been getting any dates with women, whatever the particular flavor is for you. And there's no simple answer, but it does come down to what we're speaking about here, which is doing the inner work and taking the outer action. And when you put yourself in situations where you are leaning into those edges, change happens. For some guys we've worked with, it happens exponentially in a matter of months. For some guys, it is more of a gradual process, but for all of them, something happens.
Yeah. The momentum shifts. There's a tipping point. And, you know, I think what's really important to come back to is that being present means that whatever happens is okay. Yeah. Right? Being present isn't like enacting an agenda. And again, it comes back to this sense of giving. If you want to check your own frequency and see where you are, check in with how much you're authentically just giving out of the joy of your heart versus how much you're saying like, well, what about me? Why am I not getting enough? Right? And so in that act of like authentic giving, that inspires the most authentic reciprocity and authentic giving back. The other piece is, you know, guys who are thinking to themselves, man, I haven't had sex in so long. Like, you're so far ahead of the moment. Like, just be here with this moment, with this first moment of contact, and be present to that. Because sex is never going to happen down the road, at least not good sex, if this first moment of contact isn't authentic and real. You start the path with one step, and that is taking a breath, counting to 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and going up and just offering your authentic presence and whatever is true for you and alive for you. So let's talk about some of the like concrete practices here that can help anchor this, because there's the inner work that you get to do, and then there's just the experiments you do in the world, right? Yeah. There's how you show up in practice.
Yeah, and I want to start off with a little litmus test that you can try out in any given moment. You talked earlier, Joshua, about checking in to determine whether you're coming to an interaction trying to get, and whether you're trying to source your value from somebody else. And a really easy litmus test of determining whether or not you're doing that is just pausing for a moment and saying, if I approach her and she gives me this answer, how will I feel? Oh, if she gives me this answer, how am I going to feel? And it gives you an opportunity to check in and say, what expectations am I bringing to this interaction that are going to, hamper me from being present and being authentic and really being in a giving state.
Yeah. And, you know, and we say that with caution, because the easiest thing to do when you have an opportunity is to get stuck in your head, sort of like that, weighing all of the options, right? But it is great, you know. And I thought it's kind of like the butthurt test. Like, how butthurt am I going to be if this person rejects me?
Yep.
How butthurt am I going to be if my attention and desire is not reciprocated? If you're going to be really butthurt about it, then you probably have a lot of expectation riding on it, and it's a transactional approach rather than a gift economy that you're operating.
And I'll do this less in the moment when I want to approach somebody, and more inquiry after the fact. This oftentimes happens for me after I'm already in relationship with somebody and I'm seeking something from them, and I'll check in with myself and I'm like, well, what happens if she says, this actually instead? And I can kind of calibrate myself to my expectations. And sometimes I'm honest about that. Sometimes I'm saying, hey, you know what? I wanted to ask you for this thing, and I noticed myself realizing that if you said this thing, I would get butthurt about it. And it just opens up the space for authenticity and a deeper conversation.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And well, yeah, go ahead.
And I'll just say, and this takes practice, right? The more you put yourself in situations where you can have these feelings and take that action, the more comfortable you're going to become, and courage starts shifting towards confidence, right? And we like to encourage guys to start with a really simple next step, which is, can you just go out into the world and pick 5 women over the next 24 hours to just put your presence on and to beam a sense of warmth at, without having to engage them or ask them for anything, and without feeling like you need something from them, but just put your attention on them and just like beam like warmth, beam appreciation at them. Let them know through your gaze and through the feeling of your body and through your eyes that you appreciate their existence. Like, what happens when you do that? Do some experiments and see how it feels for you. Because I promise you, if you're like me and the guys that we work with, it feels really good. It feels really good to give this way.
I want to qualify,
even if a woman can't receive you.
We've had guys for whom this has really brought up a lot of shame. Not all guys, this feels really good. Some guys are like, they feel like they're doing something wrong even by putting their attention on her, or it brings up their shame around their attraction and their desire. So I want to say that whatever comes up for you is a really potent mirror for just where you're at in your kind of that journey of being authentic and being able to express yourself and create connection with women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's step one. And then step two, if that works for you and you feel like you want more, is actually then find 5 women over the next few days that you can, if you feel attraction or drawn to something about this woman, it doesn't have to be sexual attraction, but just go share a compliment. Go appreciate her. Like, wow, I really love the way that those pants go with that shirt. Or, God, your eyes are complimented by that shirt so beautifully. Or, wow, your earrings are gorgeous. Whatever it is, like, just go offer that compliment and then walk away. Like, don't offer that compliment as a gambit for more connection. Just give the appreciation, give the compliment, and walk away and see how that feels. Right?
And there might be a little bit more of a natural conversation. You don't need to be like, that's a really beautiful earring, and then turn around and walk away immediately, you know.
But if you have to do that, do it, right? Be as awkward as you need to be. And like, don't like feel like you have to play by the rules and bail on the conversation instantly, right?
Yeah.
But don't go in as a gambit. Go in that your only business there is to give something.
To give something to her. I was at a coffee shop yesterday and I gave the barista a compliment. I said, "You look really beautiful today." And she lit up. She's like, she had a red head wrap and she had done it in the back. And she's like, "This is the first time I figured out how to wrap it in the back. I usually do it on the top." And I was like, "It looks gorgeous on you. I love the color." We had a conversation for a few minutes and that was it. And I could tell that it totally landed and made her day better. And then I was at dinner yesterday evening, and to the waitress, I said, "You look really beautiful tonight." And she was just like, "Thank you." Not really receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get different responses.
Yeah. And what I find is that the more that my days are filled with conversations that are about appreciation, like the more nourishing it gets. Like, and there's something delicious about just exchanging energy with a woman.
Yeah.
It's like intrinsically lovely when it's based on a sense of mutual respect, or a sense of respect and a sense of giving, and not a sense of sort of trying to get. Yeah. There's something just intrinsically beautiful about it, even as in the case of the waitress, if she can't reciprocate or maybe isn't receiving it the way that you would have liked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of those basic steps, if you take those steps on a consistent basis, I promise you things are going to change for you.
Yeah.
If you really look at your expectations, if you really just come back to kind of nurturing this capacity to acknowledge the gift of your presence, if you show up curious and open and ready to give, and you start just practicing this in the world in little ways, even if it's silently just putting your attention on somebody, I think you'll find amazing things start to happen. Yeah. And you'll get to see your stuff show up right there in front of you, and you realize that it's not about them, it's about you. It's what you're bringing to the interaction.
And that's the place where you get to go back to, this is what we do with our guys in Authentic Dating Secrets. We send them out on assignments like this. This is just one of a number that we do. And their stuff comes up and they come back into our live calls and we're like, cool, here's the material now that you get to work with and that got kicked up, that you get to kind of do some of the deeper inner workarounds.
Yeah, you get to unpack it, digest some of that stuff, and get more honest with yourself about what you've been bringing to these interactions.
Yep. So you can get free of it, get what you want, and give women what they want too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Well, what happened with these ladies in Boise?
Did we end up having a all-nighter fivesome, or did we get our asses handed to us?
Well, a little bit of neither, I think. Mostly neither. We just sat there like stewing in the awkwardness and kept like, connecting and trying to like make light of how weird it was and how totally unresponsive they were, until I think one of them like shifted chairs and they all just kind of started ignoring us.
No. Here's what happened. You were like, you took a poll at the table. You were like, how many of you want us to leave the table? And then three of them raised their hands, and then one of them didn't. And Joshua, you looked at her and you were like, I forget exactly what you said. You're like, you're really screwing up their game or something to that effect. In a nice way. It wasn't a mean comment. But it was just this funny moment of where most of the girls were like, they were tentative about raising their hands. They were like, but they were like, yeah, we want you guys gone. And then one of the girls was into it.
Yeah.
But you took a poll at the table and we left.
Yeah.
I do think it would land more on the side of we got our asses handed to us, but only like from the outside, you know, it didn't feel that way on the inside.
No, we got their authenticity handed to us.
Yep.
Like,
yeah,
the only ones who can hand us our asses are us. Like our
exactly.
like our sense of like value wasn't wrapped up in how they responded. So we just got to stay present and be like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, what's happening for you? And then get that authentic feedback and just keep playing. It's just improv. It's improvisational play. It's just, how do we connect? And then how do we honor and respect when, okay, we got some feedback here, so we're going to go find somewhere else to put our attention that's more sort of fun for everyone.
Yeah.
You know?
And what you bring up here is such an important piece that we'll absolutely do a deeper video about, but which is that whatever it is that we're getting from a woman, whether it's a cold stare or just like a vibrant kind of welcoming energy, that's her giving us her authenticity. She's delivering what's true for her in the moment. And the more we can take our bullshit out of the picture, the more we can own our value, the greater the opportunity for truly intimate connection comes up. Because the moment that I don't close up and take it personally, when she's closing up, it just opens the gates to the possibility of you know, this may not happen in every moment when I'm approaching a woman for the first time, but absolutely once you get deeper into a relationship, to say, hey, notice you're shutting down. What's coming up for you? This is the gates of intimacy are literally right here, in realizing that a woman is always giving you her authenticity, no matter what it is. The less you can take it personally, the more availability you have for intimacy. So,
yeah. And that the practice of being vulnerable, being real, of owning your value, of showing up and asking for what you want doesn't stop with the approach or the first date or the 10th date. Like, this is a lifelong practice of courageously embodying what's real and true for you, and trusting that whatever comes back is essential feedback and is informing the relationship.
And that's what we tell guys who are taking this program sometimes, is that there's a lot of pickup courses out there that can teach you how to go meet women and get what you want from women. And a lot of the tools and tactics that you're going to learn in other places, they actually poison the opportunity for deeper intimacy. What we're teaching guys in Authentic Dating Secrets, yes, it's in the context of dating, but these are really fundamental principles of relating that are going to provide a foundation for you to build an intimate relationship upon, to whatever extent that you want.
Yeah. Yep. So have fun with it. Go try out some of these experiments and drop some comments about it. And if any of this has resonated with you, if you have any questions that come up for you, please drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear more. We're always inspired by what's stimulated in our audience from these conversations, and want to just keep building on that. So stay engaged. Check out the webinar if you haven't yet. We'd love to have a conversation with you soon about dropping a little deeper into the Authentic Dating Secrets journey. Yeah.
Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye-bye.
Ciao.